my god, so today we have a Superbee emblem, and I have never been so excited for an emblem. Like, honestly, I have so many emblems, it's not even funny. I used to work at a BMW/Dodge dealership, and I would get emblems off of cars all the time, but I was looking for emblems, and a buddy of mine had this, and I was like, dude, I need it, send it to me. I'm a huge Dodge fan, my brother is a huge Dodge fan, and I knew, like, I needed that emblem to make a project out of it. So he sent it over. Wasn't sure what exactly I was going to make, but I figured it fit inside of this resin mold that I have here. So why not make it into a coaster? I texted my brother to see what kind of colors he wanted and such, and thought if he was a good idea, because if he didn't want it put in a coaster, I wouldn't do that. I would just send him the emblem, but why not make it something functional or something more to look at rather than just here's a Superbee emblem, because it's already cool on its own, but I know we can spice it up a bit and make it look even better. So I already mixed up my resin. I completely forgot to record that part, but it's super easy. The resin I use is art resin, and it's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. So you need to make sure that with your resin you are mixing it correctly. If you use too much or not enough of something, your resin will not cure correctly, and it can have issues later down the line with just how it holds up. The coloring even can change. It's just, you want to make sure that you are specific to what your resin calls for. So I just put a thin layer of resin in here and then popped some of the bubbles with a torch. Just a small cooking torch is what I used, and there I was just picking out some of the bubbles, because if you can't get all of them, they will eventually go away with heat, but honestly it's just easier to just heat it up quickly with a torch or a lighter. That way you know for sure there's no air bubbles in any of your resin. So I am working backwards with this. The bottom side of the mold is what's actually going to be the front. So I'm going to put this emblem in upside down, and you want to make sure that it's kind of centered in what you're doing. This is obviously the exact same size, so I'm just going to put it exactly center, and I'm going to be careful while laying it in here that I don't want air bubbles underneath there. So I want to make sure that I kind of move it around and really get resin underneath, because like I said, it will be the front, and if there's any bubbles in there, that means there's no resin up front, and you will have holes where the air bubbles were. So I for sure try and make sure that the resin really sits in and kind of seeps in and around all that, since the since the emblem isn't just flat, there is some bumps to it. So I just let it sit in there until it hardens up. Now I am taking some more resin, and I'm just going to keep pouring it in there, because honestly I want this whole thing to be covered. So here I'm pouring in the resin, even though you can't see it, because my hands always block everything that I'm doing. I need to record from the other side, but my tripod does not fit on the other side of my desk, so it never fails that I just end up blocking everything I do. So yeah, I just poured in more resin, and as you can see, the head is kind of sinking. I try and hold it up as much as I can, but my resin doesn't sit right away. My resin does sit in like 6 hours, I think it is. But I just want to keep pouring resin, and I'm not putting it on the emblem directly because I didn't want it to sink forward. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. So I just kind of keep it on one edge, and since the head was sinking down, I didn't necessarily put resin over there. I only put it on one side to try and keep it from just fully sinking down, if that makes any sense at all. When you're doing projects yourself, you'll kind of notice that some things are lighter than resin, some are heavier, so really you just have to mess with what you're trying to put into the resin, whether it'll float or sink, and kind of just work with it to your advantage. So the resin is now in here, and my emblem, I'm just going through popping little air bubbles, moving it around, making sure that it doesn't slide all the way over, because I want it to be dead center. So when I do projects like this, I always check up on them, because I'm just always bored and I can never let things just set. So I always mess with my projects just to make sure that they're good. And this was definitely a project that I had to keep checking on to make sure that that logo stayed in the center. You obviously want to make sure when you're doing stuff like this that you want it on a flat surface. Sometimes that's not the case, or you don't notice it. Like, my desk claims that it's level, but there's no way, because sometimes things just pour a little off center. But I just kind of make sure that there's resin everywhere, and then I'm going to leave this set to harden before I do the next step. So here it is now fully cured. I lost some footage of this, so sadly I don't have footage of me pouring the metal flake, but the metal flake is done. It is ready to be unmolded. Of course, I used Paint Hopper's metal flake. I love their flake, so we picked a purple color for this, and I pretty much did the same thing where it was set hard for sure, and I mixed the flake in with the resin super thick, poured it on top, let it set for another 6 hours so that I could unmold it. So doing it in layers, that way it ensures that your glitter or flake or whatever you're using doesn't sink down in front. If I was to do this not in layers, like if I was to pour the flake in right away, it honestly would have sunk down and covered the whole emblem. You wouldn't see anything. So this turned out so freaking cool. I'm obsessed with it. There's a couple air bubbles like what I was saying. You can kind of see in there on the wing, a little bit on the eye and stuff, but they're not gaping air bubbles, if that makes sense. Like, they're still flat because they're in the resin. It's not like it was on the very top surface to where you would feel that it's a bubble. But in this case, I think the bubbles worked to my advantage and they turned out super freaking cool. And the flake, of course, is beautiful. The purple was beautiful. This turned out better, honestly, than I could have ever imagined. Yeah, so that is the coaster done, and you can see it here with the flash, and I think it looks freaking cool. Like, it's the best of both worlds with an emblem and metal flake. Like, it's a freaking car coaster and I love it. Later I do go in and wet sand the edges and the bottom just because I don't like that free unfinished look to it. Since this is going to be a coaster sitting on a table, I would rather it not scratch a table, so I always make sure that I finish the back sides of my coasters. I never just leave it be how it is. You can see there's kind of a little spot on one side that's like orange. That's actually from the silicone mold. It ripped. I've yet to figure that out. If someone has any tips for how to not get your molds to rip, please let me know. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this thing, and if you give it a try, send me pictures. I want to see what everyone else is making. And yeah, my brother for sure loved this coaster when I sent it to him. They don't even use it as a coaster. He's just got it on display because he was like, dude, this is way too cool. But yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.